God-level duplication system. Chapter 90. Many true disciples of the Spirit opening stage and elders of the inner sect might not be able to comprehend the 10% artistic conception. However, Lin Xuan had done it. This shocked Chen Xiao. But this incident happened right in front of his eyes, and he had no choice but to believe it. However, he didn't have the time to think about it at this moment. Lin Xuan's sword light had already arrived. The power of the 10% sword intent was just too strong. It was a realm higher than Lin Xuan's cultivation base, and he still had the half-incomplete saber intent. However, all of these couldn't even withstand a single blow from Lin Xuan. At this moment, he couldn't help but feel a deadly threat in his heart. He knew that if he couldn't take this sword strike, he would be seriously injured if he wasn't careful. Chen Xiao didn't dare to be careless. The true qi in his danshan gushed out crazily. He circulated the half-incomplete saber intent and slashed out once again. This time, Chen Xiao swung out 8 scarlet flame blade lights. He no longer cared about the damage to his body as he attacked with all his might. But even so, Chen Xiao's attack was very weak in front of the fierce wind sword light that was enhanced by the 10% sword intent. The moment their attacks collided, Chen Xiao's attack shattered. It couldn't even consume half of the fierce wind sword light's power. Fortunately, it still blocked Lin Xuan's attack for a few seconds. Chen Xiao already knew that after Lin Xuan revealed the 10% sword intent, he would definitely lose. Therefore, he did not hesitate at all. He used the rebounding force from the collision of the blade light and the sword light to fly backwards. He fell straight down from the arena and kept retreating until he was 100 meters away from it. Only then did he stop. However, even though Chen Xiao took the initiative to dodge and fall off the arena, he was still shaken until the vitality churned. He could no longer bear it, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Chen Xiao looked at Lin Xuan, who was on the arena. He was even more shocked. Lin Xuan's strength was probably stronger than most of the late condensation spin stage inner sex elites. On the stage, the incomparably powerful Zephyr Blade continued downward. Without Chen Xiao blocking it, it landed on the arena. A terrifying explosion sounded. The entire square was like a huge earthquake, shaking a few times. In the distance, the disciples outside the square had suffered internal injuries. They fell to the ground and cried out in pain. The faces of the deacons around the ring changed slightly. They hurriedly stood up and flew backwards. They retreated 100 meters before stopping with lingering fear. They looked at the ring. At this moment, the arena was filled with smoke and dust, blocking their view. A gust of violent wind swept past, taking away the smoke and dust that pervaded the air. The scene in the arena was displayed in front of everyone's eyes. At this moment, a deep crack ran through the arena. It almost split the entire arena into two. Lin Xuan stood where he was. His expression was cold as he slowly put away his sword. It was as if nothing had happened to him. Seeing this scene, everyone on the scene widened their eyes and stood rooted to the ground. They were extremely shocked. After a while, someone gradually regained some consciousness. Instantly, large amounts of gasps echoed. The arena also erupted like an explosion, and it was extremely noisy. This arena was able to withstand most of the elite battles of the inner sect. How did it become like this? Senior disciple Chen Xiao has already lost. I didn't even see how he lost. Did they decide the winner? Senior brother Lin Xuan is too strong. All the disciples were discussing amongst themselves. They looked at the broken arena in the distance and Lin Xuan, who had a calm expression on his face. All of them were shocked. Even though they had regained their senses, their shock didn't diminish in the slightest. Because just now, they had only seen a violent wave of fire enveloping the entire stage. But not long after, the ground shook as if an earthquake had occurred. By the time they recovered from their shock, Chen Xiao had already fallen below the arena and was defeated. There was still blood at the corner of his mouth, and it was obvious that he was injured. The original ring had almost been split into two, and it had become dilapidated. Lin Xuan stood in the arena. His expression was cold as he slowly sheathed his sword. Before this, it was Chen Xiao who had unleashed the half-incomplete saber intent. His might had soared explosively. At that time, they all thought that Chen Xiao would win this match. However, it had only been a few breaths of time, and it had turned into such a scene. The situation seemed to have completely changed. They could not believe it. Even though they had regained their senses, they still felt a deep sense of illusion. It was because the scene before them was too unrealistic. It was as if they were dreaming. The disciples were once again shocked by Lin Xuan. This time, they were not only shocked by Lin Xuan's talent, but also his strength. He had almost destroyed the arena and defeated Chen Xiao. His strength was greater than most of the inner sex elites. His strength had far surpassed that of the ordinary disciples of the inner sect. Their eyes were filled with respect and admiration as they looked at Lin Xuan. They didn't dare to look down on him anymore. Even though Lin Xuan had only entered the sect for a month, they had already stayed in the inner sect for a few years. Because this was a world where strength was respected, the so-called qualifications were useless in the face of the true difference in strength. And the strength that Lin Xuan displayed at this moment was far from what they could compare with. They didn't dare treat Lin Xuan with the attitude they had before. In the crowd, Chen Yuzi looked at Lin Xuan, who was in the arena from afar. His expression was stunned. He was still in a state of shock as he muttered in a low voice, "Lin Xuan, as expected, I underestimated you." He had lost to Lin Xuan in the competition, and he had entered the inner sect. In less than 10 days, Lin Xuan had also entered the inner sect. Furthermore, he had already surpassed Lin Xuan by a large realm, but now he had been surpassed by Lin Xuan instead. They met again in the gambling arena. When he cast the embryonic form of the concept, he was still defeated by the other disciples of the inner sect, but those disciples of the inner sect were defeated by Lin Xuan. Now, the strength he had displayed was more than 10 times stronger than his strength during the competition. After that, a few late Qi transformation stage disciples were defeated by Lin Xuan. Chen Anlin, who had also used the embryonic form of the saber intent and was also a Qi transformation stage peak, was defeated by Lin Xuan. Now, even the elite of the inner sect, Chen Xiao, has been defeated by Lin Xuan. Lin Xuan's strength had almost exceeded his imagination. He couldn't believe it, no matter what. He was shocked. Even after a few breaths, he still hadn't recovered.